Hey everyone, this is Peter Sco from Music is a Journey. Today I'm very excited because I get to introduce two albums to you and I am allowed to feature some of the music from each of them. So let's get started and I can say, cue the music. Alright, the first two albums I'm going to introduce today. The first one here is by Kinetic Element. It is called Chasing the Lesser Light, and it was just released on March 20th this year. The other album is by a band called Lobate Scarp, and You Have It All was released on May 6th last year. There's a very good reason why I'm going to talk about both of these albums together here in this video today, and that is because they have one thing in common. Well, besides being prog bands, the one thing they have in common is that guitarist Peter Matuchniak plays on both of those albums. Who is Peter Matuchniak? You don't know? Well, okay, so first of all, you're going to have to go back after this video and watch my video from way back when, like about 4 or 5 years ago, where I introduced Peter Matuchniak. And there's been a couple of other videos where I talked about some of the more recent releases that he's appeared on. But just to give you a brief background here, so first of all, actually, Peter was playing in a couple of bands in the early 80s. They actually did have some recordings, but I think nothing was actually ever released. And later on, Peter, who actually is from England, from London, he left and went to India, and then later on he moved to California, where he has been living for the last, I don't know, 3 decades or so. Anyway, about 20 years ago or so, I don't know if he started picking up the guitar again, but anyway, he got himself into a band called Evolve 4, and they released an album called Decadent Light. After that, he became involved with Gecko Project, and Gecko Project released Electric Forest and Rhea of Titan, which is a concept album. Peter has also released solo albums, including Uncover Me, Destiny, and much more recently, Sessions, which includes recordings that he did with other artists on their albums, which he was given permission to remix and remaster his own way. So this was a collection of his music. And I've talked about all of these albums, including this one here, in previous videos. Also, he was part of the Bomber Goggles band, who put out one album here, Ireland, a couple of years back. And more recently, he joined up with Kinetic Element. And of course, now also Lobate Scarp. So, let's talk about this Kinetic Element album, Chasing the Lesser Light. If you can guess, maybe, by the album cover here, this is a kind of concept album about spaceflight. Basically, humanity's travel into space, starting from, including like the first step we need to take to get into space. And that song talks about how at some future date, from some distant star, we will look back and remember when we took our first step on Mars. There are also songs about moon landings and about getting to Mars. So this is basically about getting ourselves off Earth into space, and what an exciting, thrilling journey that has been so far. And there's much to go ahead of us. Alright, so a little bit about Kinetic Element. The basically leader of it is the piano, organ, and synthesizer player Mike Visaggio. Got that right, Mike? I guess? Okay. And basically Kinetic Element style, let's see here, pulled from their Bandcamp page. It says, recommended for fans of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Yes, Genesis, with a focus on vintage keyboards, including hints from Triumvirate and early L'Orme. Alright, wow, yeah, and I'd say that that's pretty accurate. Although I will add that some of the bass in there, although it does very much sound like Yes and early Genesis, there's also times I felt there was a bit of Geddy Lee in there as well. So, who is playing with Kinetic Element? Well, of course, Mike Visaggio on the keyboards. We have Michael Murray playing drums. We have Mark Tupko on bass. St. John Coleman on vocals, and of course Peter Matuchniak playing guitar. This is the second studio album of Kinetic Element to feature Peter Matuchniak on guitar. They had two previous ones before he joined the band, and as well they recently released a live album on which Peter plays. In fact, just last month here, April, Kinetic Element went off to Wales to play at some prog festival there, a weekend-long prog festival, so that was pretty cool. Okay, so let's just talk about the album. First of all, the introduction to this video, I included part of the opening of the first track, First Stage. Now, First Stage starts off with a really kind of mysterious and dark instrumental part, but it has a lot of exciting instrumental parts going on in there. It is also a song with actual vocals, and it leads off the album telling us about the first stage of getting off of Earth and out into space. There is a really exciting part that I'd like to talk about that I would like you to hear, and so with permission from both Mike and Peter, I'm going to play this little clip here for you to hear from the first track, First Stage. So the next track is the title track, that is Chasing the Lesser Light, and that is a long, epic piece. It has lots of stuff going on. It does have a bit of vocals here, and there's a kind of cool part in the vocals that I rather like. Then I'm just going to play a clip from here, which will then lead us off into a bit of an instrumental part. So let's check that out. As this is a longer piece, there are lots of change-ups in the music. It's like you hear part of it and you think, wow, this is a really exciting thing they've got going on, and they play it for about like 8 measures, and then they change over and do something else, and change over and do something else. So it really follows in that classic 70s symphonic prog style where they keep mixing things up. And there's one part, it's got this like ELP sounding keyboard solo, and there's another really killer keyboard solo later on. So I want to feature just a bit of some of the instrumental from this song as well, because it's got so much really cool stuff in it. So let's check out a little bit more from the title track of Chasing the Lesser Light. The third track is called Radio Silence, and interestingly enough, the 2017 album The Mission by Styx also had a song called Radio Silence, and that album was about the first mission to Mars, and it was a really cool song. This one here is about the first trip up to the moon. Daddies with Apollo go one of the lines in the song, and it is told from the perspective of the boy whose father is up there around the moon, and they lose contact, and there's that radio silence, the worst radio station, and they're waiting to hear, you know, let me hear Daddy's voice one more time, says the boy. So I want to feature just a little bit of some of the music from this track here too, because there's some really cool parts in there. So let's check that out a little bit here from Radio Silence.
Radio silence, please fill in the void. Let the spaceman speak to his boy.
I'm gonna step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
All right, the fourth track, We Can't Forget. That's also a bit of a longer one here as well. There are many, of course, instrumental parts. This is one of the things that I find really so exciting about this album. If you like this kind of classic 70s prog style with very busy, intricate music with lots of things changing all the time, this song has that. This album has that. And there's parts like the beginning of the song is actually really quite pretty. And there's quite a bit of an instrumental bit before the vocals come in. And then, of course, we've got more instrumental parts. I'm just checking my notes here. I seem to have pointed out a lot of things from this song here. And in fact, at one point, I think the vocals were reminding me of somebody. And I think it might be, what's his name? Is it Peter Cook of IQ, the neo-prog band IQ? I think so. Anyway, kind of reminded me of that. Yeah, we've got a great instrumental section coming up at 7 minutes, and I've put down here also there's a really cool organ solo from 9 minutes. So let's just hear a little bit of a clip from We Can't Forget. Hopefully you will not forget how cool this album is sounding so far. The final track is called Door to Forever, and it is again just another wonderful 70s prog inspired piece with lots of things going on. And I see by my notes that I've put that there is a really cool keyboard solo around 8 minutes. But you know, I think you've gotten a really good idea of what this album sounds like. And so if it is your cup of tea, you can go straight over to Bandcamp and take a look. If you just want to go for a download, I think that's possible. Otherwise, there are CDs available. I had to have the CD, right? So anyway, please do check out Kinetic Element. You can also check out their other albums on Bandcamp. And if you're curious about hearing more of Peter Matuchniak's playing, please check out some of the albums that I introduced here at the beginning of the video. So now let's take a look at the Lobate Scarp album, You Have It All. By the way, what is a Lobate Scarp? It is a geophysical term for a lobed escarpment that happens during thrust faulting, where the crust is kind of cooling and then it shrinks and one part of it gets thrust up over another part and makes an escarpment with kind of lobes in it. So anyway, you can see them on the moon, you can see them on Earth, I think, and you probably can find them on Mars too, actually, so pretty cool. Anyway, Lobate Scarp, this is the second album and the second full-length album, and there was actually quite a space of time in between the first and the second. It is by Adam Sears, is basically the band leader. He is lead vocals, synths, piano, and organs. There's also quite a list of people, including members in the band as well as guests. Taking a look at the guest list, we have John Davison of Yes, formerly of Glass Hammer, of course. We have Jimmy Keegan from Spock's Beard and Pattern Seeking Animals. And yes, I did pick up that Pattern Seeking Animals CD, and it is really good. Let's see here. We also have Eric Moore from Suicidal Tendencies and Infectious Grooves. We have Ryo Okamoto from Spock's Beard, and Billy Sherwood now playing bass in Yes for the late Chris Squire. There's for regular members in the band, we have Andy Catt bass and vocals, of course Peter Matuchniak guitar, and then there's a whole list of people: Hoyt Binder and Nate Olmos taking guitar on tracks 2 and 7 respectively, Eric Moore on drums for 1, 5, and 9, and Jimmy Keegan drums on tracks 4 and 8, and Mike Gerbrandt drums on tracks 2 and 7, and Billy Sherwood and John Davison having vocals on track 5, and Ryo Okamoto B3 organs, synth, and jazz piano tracks 1 and 8. Hugh Thomas Lee viola solos track 5, and yeah, there's actually quite a bit of strings in here, like I guess viola and violin. Just going to take a little bit look down because this list is so long. But yes, we do have a string quartet on here with 4 people: cello, viola, violin, 2 violins, 1 viola, and a cello. We have another viola for tracks 1, 2, and 7, violin on track 2, French horn, more violin, viola, synths and drums programming, additional guitars, and you know what? Go to Bandcamp, check out Lobate Scarp. You have it all. Read the list of all the people who are involved in this. This is really an incredible album, I think. It is a modern prog album, so it is, in some ways, it is quite different from the Kinetic Element album. We have, I always feel that the modern prog albums have more focus on song melodies, and song melodies or vocal melodies have more importance perhaps than a lot of the old classic type style ones, and in exchange there is less emphasis on all this continuous changes in the music. However, that does not mean that we're just looking at regular songs here. It is still a prog album. We still have 2 epic tracks on here of 16, 17 minutes long, with lots of things happening in the music, extended instrumental sections, things that, you know, just keep moving on. It is a really exciting album. The other day I listened to, a couple of days back, I listened to the Kinetic Element album, and then I listened to the Lobate Scarp album, and I thought both of them were really cool. And then a couple of days ago, I listened to this one twice in the morning and this one twice in the evening. And I just remember when I came home that evening, there was still some 6 minutes left on the final track. And I reached my house, and I just walked around the neighborhood for another 6 minutes or so, and kind of conducted an air orchestra in front of my front door there for the last minute or so before it all wrapped up. And I just felt at that time that I could just put these 2 albums on a playlist as they are, and probably next week I could just listen to them over and over and over again. But anyway, let's see here. Let's take a look at some of the songs from You Have It All. So the opening track is called Conduit. It's an instrumental with keyboards, guitars, violins, or viola possibly. And 6 minutes in, you get this kind of cool Asian instrument part, and it segues into the next track with a kind of just a bass intro part here. But I really want to feature just a little bit from Conduit here. So let's take a little listen to some of the wonderful music from track 1 from You Have It All. I think I also want to mention that when I was checking out people's lists of their favorite prog albums of 2022, this one showed up on at least 2 lists, and there was also the guy whose YouTube channel I think is called Notes or something like that. Anyway, he also was reviewing this album on one of his videos, so there were a lot of favorable comments. I actually did take a look at it on Prog Archives, and not so many people reviewed it, but the people who did gave it very favorable remarks. Okay, let's see here. The second track is called Nothing Wrong, and according to my notes, it has a slow and gentle, mysterious intro, but then gets into a very full-on rocking chorus. And that's actually one of the things I find that's really cool about this album. It has so many moods to it, you know, sometimes a little bit haunting or eerie, sometimes very beautiful, sometimes lots of wonderful uplifting melodies, and sometimes it rocks out a little bit hard or gets a little bit on the aggressive side. I felt like listening to this album, there are times where I feel either I'm being like lifted up and carried over dunes by a sea coast, and other times I am like dancing on those dunes with, you know, the grasses waving around. It's it has that kind of emotional effect listening to this album here. But anyway, Nothing Wrong is the second track, and the third one is called In the Night 1, and this is just a short instrumental thing. It has this kind of interesting 80s intro with a violin or viola solo, keyboards, very pretty, has this kind of like 80s rhythm to it. And there's a thing, you know, I actually really did not like a lot of the music in the 80s, you know, aside from hard rock and metal, but I didn't like a lot of the pop music in the 80s. And it wasn't so much, okay, so it was actually the songs I didn't like, but the sounds, I didn't like the production, but the actual sounds of the instruments were not so bad. And so I really like that a lot of these modern prog bands are bringing up some of these sounds from the 80s and using it in their music. And that's what we hear on In the Night. We move on to Lifeline. And I've written here it has, again, an 80s sounding prog rock, perhaps. And it has a really beautiful build up and then a great melody coming in from around 4 minutes or so. So let's just listen to a little bit from that track there, Lifeline. So You Have It All is one of the first, is the first long track on the album, and I have here that it has an instrumental with violin or viola intro. We've got a nice gentle part around 4 minutes with some very softer, lighter vocals. That might be John Davis in there singing, coming in around 5 minutes. After 9 minutes and 30 seconds, it gets a little bit more harder rocking, and we've got another violin or viola solo. My apologies to the violin and viola players that I don't know the difference, or at least not right now after, you know, I haven't listened to this for 2 days. And then we've got, again, a really nice instrumental part coming in at 11. So yeah, my notes here, just like, you know, the intro and at 4 minutes and at 5 minutes and at 9:30 and at 11, and there's just so many points. I was taking out my phone while listening to this and tapping in, okay, what time is it? Okay, this is really cool here too. So yeah, I really liked the title track on here. It's brilliant. Okay, then we go on to In the Night 2. And this is actually, I guess it's a continuation from 1, but this part here is not an instrumental. There are actually lyrics to it. But again, it's pretty short. And I put here that there's a synthesizer solo that's worth listening to. Okay, up until now, we are looking at a pretty cool album. I remember already I was really into it, even the first listen. But I especially remember the last 3 tracks. So the first one is called Beautiful Light, and it is really beautiful, very beautiful beginning, very pretty song, lots of nice melody. It does get a little bit tougher, a little bit more punch to it, and Peter's guitar is a little more rocking in one part, but then it has some fantastic instrumental part and a very beautiful wrap up. So let's hear a little bit from Beautiful Light. It's really a lovely track.
This could be a magical life from now to the end of your time. So reach for the beautiful light.
All right. Now, this next one here, I read on Bandcamp, at least one person cited it as his favorite. It might be mine, maybe. It's called Our Test Tube Universe. It has a very cool bass rhythm, has this nice atmosphere. It's a scientific type one, you know. It's about this guy in a laboratory who is doing all these quantum calculations and experiments. And he's a bit of an oddball kind of guy too. Like his colleagues kind of know, you know, all right, he's doing that thing. But yeah, let's see here. Yeah, this is where I felt the vocal enunciation does have a bit of a Spock's beard feel to it. At around 220, it's just to get a little bit harder and darker. And then we've got this great piano. I like this kind of like almost horror movie type piano, and then this mellotron comes in with a kind of Eastern feel to it, and then we get some harder bar chords on the guitar, and we get this cool bass riff. And then I don't know, I've got a note here of at least 2 or 3 different parts I should feature, so I'm gonna guess I'm gonna pick one part during the editing. But anyway, let's hear something from Our Test Tube Universe.
Doesn't understand his data. Commencing quantum trial 222. His test is still derived from beta. It's just an echo of his creation. How do we see a world that's not our own? Only a part of our perception shows.
All right, this has been one terrific album so far, and we get to the last track, Flowing Through the Change, which is another longer track, and it starts off very soft and pretty, and you know, hearing it, I thought, okay, we've had such a terrific album so far, I think it's okay to kind of just sit back and relax a little bit now. But you know what? Even the slower, beautiful songs don't just let you sit back and float along. This song, again, there were constant times I was taking out my phone thinking, what time are we? What time are we into the song here? This part sounds good. This part sounds good. Just taking a look at my notes, it has a great dramatic instrumental start with keyboards and strings. It slows down and features the bass and the violin solo. 7 minutes, we have a very soulful guitar solo followed by strings instrumental. We've got a sudden change in the music, some rock guitar and synthesizer joins in. Beautiful change back to the main theme around 10 minutes. And a very beautiful dramatic ending that lasts 2 minutes or so. This is a song that after they go wandering off and take you through some different instrumental parts, they come back into the main theme and it just builds up, you know, they keep adding something and then you get the secondary vocals and it builds and builds and it just, you know, the whole strings come in and it's just, you know, it's like, you know, at the very end you have just danced all across the dunes and you are now standing at the top of the dune and watching the sun sink into the sea in the horizon. It has that kind of feeling. You're just elated by the end of it all. So you know what, instead of just picking one part, I'm going to pick 3 parts from this, and let's just listen to short clips from 3 different parts from the final track on here, Flowing Through the Change. All right there, fellow music fans. I hope you have become excited about both of these albums, or at least one of them, Kinetic Element, Chasing the Lesser Light, a more classic prog, 70s prog inspired album with lots of great stuff like that. You've already heard some clips from it. Go out and check more on Bandcamp. And if you like this more modern prog style, check out Lobate Scarp. You have it all. It's also on Bandcamp. I think you can listen to the songs anyway, at least some, if not all of them. Check them out and see what you think, and then go ahead and order a copy of the CD or a download if you're trying to save money. I want to say a big thanks to Peter Matuchniak for introducing me to both of these albums here. It's a wonderful thing, you know, when I'm listening to these and feeling such a thrill from listening to the music. I really feel like I appreciate Peter for more than just his guitar playing, or that he's a nice guy, you know, that I'm connected with on Facebook. It's really a treasure that he has sent me these two. As well, I want to say thanks to Mike Visaggio. I know he was going to send me a CD as well, but I told him Pete already had that covered. Mike, okay, what Mike said, when I told him how much I love this album and I wanted to feature some music in the video, he said, life is too short. Go ahead and feature what you like. If people love my music, then it's tears of joy. So you know what? I told Mike, get a box of tissue handy, because a lot of people are going to be enjoying your music after watching this video, I hope. So let's all make Mike cry some more. All right? Tears of joy. All right, and also I want to say thanks to Adam Sears. Actually, I didn't hear from him yet whether he will give me permission to feature the music or not, but I think Peter Matuchniak spoke for him, and Adam gave me a comment on Facebook when I posted about having received these two albums and what I thought about them. So anyway, Adam, thank you. And thank you, Adam, Peter, and everybody involved for, and Mike, and everybody for making these two wonderful albums. All right, again, do check them out. Thanks everybody for watching this video today. Have a great weekend. Lots of music, good times. See you again in the next video. Cheers.